We're recording. Welcome to SIG Architecture for February 28th, 2019. Jace, what's the friendly URL? Is it bit.ly/sig-architecture for the notes?
That is correct, yep.
Oh, I've got it memorized. So you can get the notes there if you're listening. Otherwise, I just paste them into chat. The first item, Paris, have you had a chance to join yet? All right, then we'll go ahead and we'll jump to the second item, and I'll go ahead and move that down the agenda. The next item on the agenda was intros. Who are you? Why are you here? Jace, I think you put this on there, and the idea is we wanted to know who are the people who come. Right now we've got, 24 connections into here, and more people than that because we have rooms. And there are some of us who talk a lot in here, but there is a wonderful assortment of people who are here who we don't hear from very often. And so we wanted to open it up and learn a little bit about you. And we've allocated here, 15 minutes to just spend some time getting to know you all. So who do we have here?
Lockie, you want to start? You're the first on my Zoom window.
Oh, okay. It wasn't the dress that got you.
No.
Hello, I'm Lockie. Lachlan Evans and I work for Microsoft. Just kind of listening to the process. Craig's saying hello there as well. Just listening to the process, and I've been just very interested in the happenings in the community and understanding where things are and how I can help. So really just recon and understanding more about the community. I will pass the baton to Craig.
I may not be next on Brian's list, but I'm Craig Peters. I work on the same team as Lockie upstream here at Microsoft, and I'm here in the first order for making sure that if there are any Windows-related issues or Windows nodes, that's my near-term goal, is to make sure that we can land that correctly in upstream. And beyond that, I've had a long-term interest in how Kubernetes works and how the evolution of the APIs is changing, and want to understand how I can contribute to that better.
Okay, Pablo, you up next?
Yep. Hi, I'm Pablo. I work for SUSE. I got interested in this group mostly because all the changes in the architecture of Kubernetes around adopting CRDs as first-class citizens. So I expected a lot of changes in the overall architecture. So my first intention here is just to educate myself on how this process goes. And I'm most interested in that topic, on this ongoing work of making custom resources first-class citizens and changing the core API around that concept.
Who do we have next?
So sorry, I have a question for Pablo. Do you also attend API Machinery, which is the primary place where CRD development is happening?
No, not yet. I've been slowly entering because actually I started and been more actively participating in the Cluster API, which is actually my primary work-related topic. And this is like, I wouldn't say secondary, but it's more like an extension of that. So I expect to start doing that very soon.
Okay,
However,
yeah, I would expect that would be a better, if that is your specific interest, that would be a better SIG to attend than this one.
But there was some discussion recently about how to install the CRDs in the, around this group, I think, also.
There are a lot of discussions that end up in SIG architecture for various reasons, but it's not really the primary place where that is being driven.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have the CRD installation Slack channel too.
All right, thank you. So the next that I think I have on here, I didn't know, well, we'll go in order with my screen here then, I guess. Aaron of SIG Beard.
Hi, I'm Aaron of SIG Beard. You may know me as Aaron of the steering committee, Aaron, the 114 release lead, Aaron, the chair of SIG release, Aaron, the owner of the GitHub administration project. I'm here principally as a reviewer on the conformance definition subproject that SIG Architecture has, as well as any of the other cross-cutting concerns that end up in SIG Architecture with regard to moving the ball forward. So things like making sure the right people are included in KEPs here, and my earlier efforts to get the KEP process itself into the hands of SIG PM, who I think are more about organization and process, but less about the technical overarching cross-cutting concerns that this group cares about.
Thank you.
I think that's it.
How about, I see a William Dennis?
Can't hear you, William.
Actually, he's not muted. Okay. How about we go on? I see Tim Auclair.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm Tim Auclair, co-chair of SIG Auth. Hi. I've been listening into SIG Architecture because I found that it's one of the best ways to keep track of kind of what's happening in the project overall, and hopefully I can help bring some of that knowledge down into SIG Auth and help people with their PRs as well.
Thank you. Does somebody want to go next? Because I'm just kind of reading across the screen, and I could keep doing that and calling people out, but it might be good if some folks who don't normally speak up want to volunteer.
How about Angel, who posted in the chat?
Yes, Angel in chat says, hi guys, my mic isn't working properly today, but just to say hi, I'm Angel Ramirez. I run a company called Kumbi. I'm probably poorly pronouncing that, and I apologize. We're a small company trying to bring cloud native and Kubernetes to Florida and South America, Colombia. For now, I'm listening and learning from all you guys. Thank you.
This room? Yeah, we can do the room here now that we finally got connected. John?
Sure. Hi, I'm John Bellameric. I'm obviously at Google. I've been here about 6 months. But I've been involved in Kubernetes community for a couple of years, primarily in SIG Network. I'm here because I'm interested in conformance and APIs and really in the health of the project and trying to see how I can contribute to making sure this continues to be a healthy project.
Solly?
Hi, I'm Solly. I'm one of the lead maintainers for the KubeBuilder project, and I've been involved in the community for a while now. I'm here, A, because I'm interested in how custom resources relate to the future evolving architecture of Kubernetes, but also just because I enjoy learning about and being involved in discussions about Kubernetes architecture in general.
Hi, I'm Ken Owens. I'm the co-chair of SIG Apps and one of the maintainers of the Workloads API. I'm here because I'm interested in how the cross-cutting concerns affect workloads and all of our users in the open source community. And so for instance, right now, some changes that we made to how kubelet watches instead of polls for secrets and config maps are breaking the way jobs work in 112.4 across all clusters. And that's the type of information that those changes are what occur here. Those decisions are what happens here. And most of the time they end up propagated up to our users via the workloads APIs.
Hi, I'm Phil Whitrock. I'm a tech lead of SIG CLI. I'm here because I'm interested in a couple things. How we define conformance and how we test for that. How we do API reviews and how we're scaling out that process. And how we define the scope of the project.
Hi, I'm Tim Hawken. I've been with the project a long time. I know most faces on here. I still pay attention mostly to networking, storage, multi-cluster, low-level topics. And I'm here because I try to keep an eye on the project overall, API reviewer, and architecturally making sure that things are consistent across all the different groups.
Daniel?
Hi, I'm Daniel. I've been on this project since
before it was open source.
Yeah, since like after Brian and Tim and Joe and Brendan, like I was the next person hands-on keyboard. And currently I'm co-chair, co-TL. We didn't ever really make a distinction in API machinery. And I like to come to SIG Architecture. Two reasons. I am an API reviewer, although I'm behind on API reviews at the moment. And also it seems like there's often discussion of like, well, should things be CRDs or should they be implement other things? So I like to be in the room to offer perspectives or be aware of what people are thinking. Yeah.
Okay, William's in here now. Do you want to introduce yourself?
I'll try that again. William Ganis, product manager on Kubernetes Engine with a focus on conformance. So that's kind of my interest in architecture that seems to be fitted over.
Okay, Dawn.
This is Dawn, and I'm the TL of the SIG node and the co-TL, and another TL SIG node is the Derek from the Red Hat. And I joined this team before we open source Kubernetes. And the reason I didn't attend all the SIG architecture, but I always look at the agenda and also the meeting notes. But occasionally I will join. The reason is because the node, it is the integration of the hop and all those kind of feature. If you really want to fly in the Kubernetes, you, in some way, in certain degree, you are going to integrate with the node team. So I'm here to try to provide the insurance and I try to provide guarantee and also make sure I can take what overall Kubernetes going on back to the SIG node team and participate in all the events and also the community decision.
Let's see, the order is shuffling around. Dims?
Hi, I work on OpenStack, SIG OpenStack related, repositories. And starting from there, I ended up doing like code reorganization stuff, conformance testing, and generally involved in things happening in Contribex and SIG testing also. I'm on the steering committee as well. I'm here to absorb the history and try to figure out, why things were done and how things were done, so that we can continue doing all the good things that we did and see if there are learnings from past stuff that we had to redo, how to make sure that we take better decisions next time. Thank you.
Yeah, you brought some cross-cutting issues to the SIG in the past as well, like the logging API, Klog, for example.
Yes, thank you.
So, Bobby?
Hi, yes, I'm Bobby Salamat from Google. I'm co-chair and TL of SIG Scheduling. I'm here because many of the decisions made at SIG Architecture also applies to the scheduler. And I want to make sure that our current developments also are in compliance with these decisions. That's pretty much it.
Right. How about Ryan?
Sure. So I'm Ryan Bezicek. I work for Cray, the supercomputer company. So we have quite a few interesting use cases for our application. So I'm kind of here just to both absorb and see, if any input we could provide can help. And I also work in the multi-tenancy working group as well. So I guess being eyes and ears for that as well.
So are you using Kubernetes?
Yes, yeah, we are using Kubernetes extensively on, I guess, with HPC as well as a lot of other internal tooling.
Cool.
All right. How about Clayton?
Hey everybody, I'm Clayton. I work at Red Hat. Been with this project for quite a long time, and so I, like Tim and Brian, I try to be some of the technical memory of why we did things and what was some of the underlying goals, and communicate that out to others and try to make sure that people don't lose sight of stuff across projects when doing API review or design work. And I come to SIG Architecture because it's awesome.
Let's try to hit the other people who don't normally come, just to make sure we get to them.
That's probably a good idea.
Do you want to?
Dhawal.
Hey, hi. I'm Dhawal. I'm an engineer at VMware. I started contributing to Kubernetes from 1.2 on vSphere Cloud Provider. Kubernetes was a very interesting project for me back then, and still it is. Right now, I'm test infra shadow in this release team of 1.14. I was also on 1.13 and observing in 1.12. I am also co-organizer for working group LTS, and I regularly visit, frequently visit SIG Architecture because I get to learn a lot about the project and understand the decision making and from very key people in the project directly in this meetings. That's why I participate in this meeting.
Andrew?
Hi, I'm Andrew. I'm one of the co-chairs of SIG Cloud Provider, and I mostly joined this meeting just to listen in and make sure the efforts we have going on in SIG are in line with the general direction of the project. And yeah, so far it's been super helpful, so thank you.
And you also volunteered to shadow conformance test reviews.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, okay, so I'll follow up on that later. But I think we have one more that I want to make sure we hit. Forrest?
Sorry?
Hey, Brian. Hey, Brian. Matt and Joyce, good to see you guys still here. My name is Forrest. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I worked in different places, AWS, Microsoft, and now with VMware Heptio. I was with this channel for a long time, and then because last year I was pulled out to a high priority project, so I didn't come for a while. And today is my first day come back. So and then it's a good opportunity. I think it's something new, and I joined this channel mainly to see the vision of like Brian and Matt and you guys, the direction of Kubernetes, and a question in my mind is what would be the next product after Kubernetes. So that's very interesting. And also, I mean, other SIG channel like auth and API, because those are areas I'm interested in as well. And now I'm directly working on Kubernetes related products. So I'm also looking for opportunities to engage more and contribute more. And pretty much that's me. If you have any questions, just you can ask me now or in the future. Thanks, Brian.
Okay, thanks for joining us. Does anybody else want to introduce themselves? We have a little bit of extra time. It looks like I'm not sure Paris can make it today.
Brian, I would say you would be good to introduce yourself and probably me as well, just to let people know why we're chairs and what we're sort of doing here, and same with Matt.
Okay, fair enough. I'm Brian Grant, co-chair of SIG Architecture, been on the project from the beginning. This SIG was actually created after the Kubernetes Leadership Summit a couple of years ago in order to try to spread out more of the knowledge and work and responsibility, which is being done on a more informal basis by a small-ish number of people, including folks like Tim Hawken and Clayton Coleman and Jordan Liggett, Daniel Smith and myself, the API approvers. So yeah, so we created this forum, and last week we talked about our thoughts about how to execute better on that mission. So one motivation to have folks introduce themselves was to try to better understand what folks who attend this meeting are actually interested in helping out with that. I did want to, Jace, you can go ahead and introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, so I work at Google. I've been the chair of this SIG since the very beginning with Brian. And in the community, I'm one of the Code of Conduct Committee members. I'm on the community admin team. I'm a sub-project lead for SIG PM. I'm the emeritus release lead for 1.8, 1.10, emeritus SIG chair for SIG Azure, SIG Release, and probably something else I'm forgetting. But so I've been deeply involved in the community since day one, and super passionate about architecture as a way to broaden our horizon past just one release, and to think about how we make this project sustainable. And sometimes it's technology, sometimes it's people, sometimes it's the nexus of the two. So that's really what I'm here to do, is serve the community in this capacity. So, Matt?
Hi, I'm chairing today and walking through some of this, but I'm the third co-chair of SIG Architecture. I've actually only been a co-chair for a few months now. I co-founded SIG Apps, and I've worked a lot with apps and all of the things around that, and the workloads, APIs, and that space. But I like hard problems, and SIG Architecture is a hard problem for a lot of what we're doing. And so I like helping out with hard problems, which is why I got involved here, because Jace and Brian had too much to do, and I'm trying to help them do some of that stuff. That's just the gist on me. I see there were a few other people that Dims noted in chat who haven't spoken. I think Vish, Travis, and some others. Did anybody want to speak up from there? Anybody else want to introduce yourselves?
I can go next. This is Nimesh Bhatia. I work for IBM, and I have a small team who contribute to open source projects in cloud and container space. So I have a team of contributors doing Kubernetes, Cloud Foundry, Docker, Containerd, and Containerd is going to graduate the project, so we are very happy today. So I'm here to learn from all of you guys, right? So and also keep, as I hear some of the leaders here who talk about the various needs, and I go and talk to the team and see what we can do. And the goal of my team is to help out community. We are separate from the products, so our sole focus is helping out the community, and that's why I'm here.
Well, welcome.
Was there anybody else who wanted to introduce themselves?
I can say a quick hello. Hi, my name's Travis Roden. I've been joining for a little while, but I work at VMware, and I'm mostly here to be a fly on the wall and learn from everyone here. I tend to be most active within SIG storage currently, but usually not much to contribute, but always like to follow along and see what the long-term trends are. That's it for me.
You're doing a lot of code reorganization work, Travis. So that fits in right here too.
And thanks for looking at it, Dims. I appreciate it.
All right. Anybody else?
I can do a brief one. I know most of you, so I'll keep it very short. I'm Quinton. I am technical VP at Huawei, focus mainly around public cloud and open source, so including Kubernetes, but quite a lot of other stuff as well. And the reason I'm here is to try and keep track of, at a high level, the changes in architecture, and a lot of the, most influential SIG leads are here. So it's good to hear from their mouth directly what's going on and what the thinking is, and help out where I can. I come from background, I was at Google for 5 years before that, and Amazon and various other places. And we have a variety of products based on Kubernetes. So in some cases, we need input from some of those perspectives. So I make myself available for that if it is required from me.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I can go next. This is Srinivas Ramaratu from IBM again. I'm basically working on some of the conformance work, and I like to learn more, so I joined this meeting for educational purposes.
Welcome.
That leaves me. Hey everyone, I'm Vish. I've been with the project for quite a long time now. I used to work a lot on monitoring and observability, and then a lot of years on the node side. I now show up in SIG architecture primarily to keep up with the system architecture decisions that are being made, and also around API extensibility, and also occasionally share my learnings and knowledge over the years.
Welcome. Anybody else who we missed? The list is long, and I haven't kept good enough track. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. With that, we can move on to the next agenda item. An update, though. Unfortunately, Paris won't be able to make it today. She had an emergency come up, and we're going to have to punt that to a future meeting. I tentatively scheduled it for our next meeting, which is March 14th, but we'll have to tie off with her on scheduling just to be sure. The next item we have in the agenda looks like Brian. It's the Conformance Working Group update.
Yeah, so the Conformance Working Group met yesterday, and several people who attended that meeting are here today at this meeting. In the meeting, SIG Architecture meeting notes, I dropped the working group meeting notes from yesterday's meeting, a link to the main project board, a spreadsheet that has a list of issues for tests for areas that we want to get in good coverage of in conformance that need to be integrated with that project board, and the SIG Architecture final review approval project board that we had been using to identify tests that were ready for final approval for addition to the conformance suites. One of the main things we discussed yesterday is how do we improve the process for getting more tests into the suite, because we desperately need more coverage for areas that are high risk for implementations and distribution services of Kubernetes that might not be 100% compatible because the components are pluggable or people have swapped them out in the community or even in products. Like just as the primary example I use is Kubelet, which has several plugin interfaces, CRI, CSI, CNI, and so on. So, so how can we improve the process, make it more obvious where areas where people can help and onboard more people for identifying tests that should be added, or for writing new tests that should be added, and for reviewing the tests that are in the pipeline. So that was the main topic. So that working group meets once a month and is a primary place to discuss this. There's also a fairly low traffic mailing list that we want to get more activity on for people who are involved or interested in getting involved. Links to that stuff are in the SIG Arch meeting notes for this meeting. So please take a look at that. That's it.
All right, thank you.
Unless people have questions.
I was just going to add a plea for help or something, potentially from this group. So there is a main project board, and if you click on that link and take a look at it, on the left-hand side is a column of 48 issues or pull requests called To Triage. And then immediately next to that is a column called Sorted Backlog. And the state we want to get to is there's a nice, groomed, ordered, sorted backlog that has priorities, and it's really clear what the most important thing to work on is, so we can start to shard that out. And I don't know who's actually responsible for doing that. To me, the question comes down to, do the bright minds in the conformance definition subproject of SIG Architecture do that? Is somebody from the conformance working group supposed to volunteer to take their best guess? It's just like, at some point here, either we need to give authority to a sole individual or a select group of individuals, or we need to find a way to come to consensus on an agreed upon prioritization.
That is a good question. I would say just in general, as we need to onboard more people onto the effort. It's definitely something other people could help out with. And this is where, clarifying the process that we want to use would help a lot. So if we want to follow the process you just described, then basically we need to translate the high-level priorities into a sufficient understanding that someone could own this and do it on a regular basis. So yeah, so if any of the people who express interest in helping the working group, this would be definitely an area where we could use help. We could onboard someone to help with that.
So let me ask this. If somebody is interested in doing conformance, who do they contact? How do they express their interest? Who can help get them on board? What does that look like?
So a couple of people who came to yesterday's working group meeting expressed interest, and I will follow up with them as soon as I get a chance within the next couple of days. If more additional people are interested, they can speak up now, or they can just email the conformance working group mailing list, or email me, or I'm not going to put it on Aaron, but he's been doing much of this so far. But I would recommend really use the mailing list.
So if somebody's interested, they should probably email the mailing list, and then one of the people involved, such as yourself, Brian, can reach out to them and help get them going?
Absolutely.
I think there's that. If you are interested in just kind of diving in and helping out with what's already there, there are lots of pull requests that need to be shepherded. And there are also lots of pull requests that need to be reviewed. The way you can signify your intent to review pull requests is to add yourself to the owner's file for conformance tests, so that you'll automatically get selected as a reviewer. The idea is conformance, so like what Andrew volunteered to do, right? The idea is if you don't have the subject matter expertise to read a PR about a conformance test, you figure out, well, what's the SIG that's responsible for this? And then you go poke them. And unfortunately, due to the nature of this project, you don't just like at them on GitHub. You actually have to go find a human being and talk to them. That's why I call it shepherding PRs. And there are many open PRs out there that could use this help. And then when you get to a point where the PR needs an approve, because it's about like adding a conformance test and it's gated on just a very select few people, you go use the mailing list to let them know, hey, I think this is ready for review.
Yeah, so I think there are two sides of the conformance test reviews. One is the domain expertise, which was just touched upon, and that's where sometimes you need to ask for help from the relevant SIG or sub-project to help make sure that that gets reviewed in a timely manner. And there's some discussion of that in the working group notes about a suggested way to go about doing that. The other side are conformance tests themselves have a number of requirements and criteria that they should follow. And Aaron wrote up some documentation about that. It is not complete. So, if there are things which are at all maybe dubious or unclear, raising that as an issue to the other set of approvers so that we can make a decision about that specific issue and make sure it gets documented and added to those documented criteria is really, really important as part of scaling this effort. So just in general, the theme is, if you're not sure, ask. And that's really the way that we're going to get more people started on this. You don't have to know everything to start doing it and to help. Like a lot of things are pretty obvious starting out.
All right, thank you. Is there anything else on conformance? Any questions?
Yeah, Matt, I had a quick question to the team here. Did we at some point approve a Windows only tag? I remember we did a Linux only tag in the conformance test, but I don't remember doing a Windows only tag. So there is an issue that's open, 74740 just now. If anybody remembers something, or I can go look through the notes.
I added the mailing list thread to the comments on that issue just a few minutes ago.
I could use help on that because I feel like there was discussion in SIG testing about this decision, in the conformance working group about this decision, here in SIG architecture about this decision. I don't know if 3 different decisions were made or if we ignored them and made another decision later on, or what's actually documented. But the current Windows only tag does not seem like an approach that is favored from a SIG testing perspective. I have not yet had the time to dig into this, so thank you for raising it, Tims. We can take this offline on that thread, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, along the lines with a direction we're trying to move is to have more of these discussions on the mailing list rather than in meetings. So thank you for raising that issue. We'll follow up on that online.
Thank you.
The mailing list.
Thanks, Craig.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments on conformance?
I just wanted to call out what I wrote in the chat real quick, just as somebody like myself who suffers from rampant imposter syndrome. It's actually a safe bet to say that something you're bringing to the table is extremely valuable to the effort. So even if you're not an expert in testing and whatnot, just as Aaron said, there's plenty of work to help with just communications and coordination and things that anybody can do. So sometimes that helps lift an extra burden off of people who can do the test reviews and those sorts of things. So err on the side of just being curious and getting involved because it actually makes a difference.
Thank you, Jace. Okay, with that, we have one final thing on the formal agenda, and that is a pull request. I'll share my screen on it. Hopefully we can remove the hold on it and get it going. So in the last meeting, we had discussed a change to SIG architecture, which was moving the meeting to be bi-weekly, moving the KEP sub-project over to SIG PM, and removing the to-dos. And in this, we got a bunch of looks good to me, including one from Ihor, who is a chair on SIG PM. So that's the other side of that handoff. It looks good. Is there any reason anything else we need to discuss, or any reason we shouldn't remove the hold? I will take silence as acceptance unless somebody speaks up. All right, I'll go ahead and remove the hold.
Cool. So just to reemphasize one thing that was mentioned there, these meetings are moving back to bi-weekly like they were originally and like many other SIG meetings are. So the next meeting will be March 14th, I think it is. If you have issues that need to be brought to the attention of SIG architecture, please raise them first on the mailing list. Don't wait for the next meeting necessarily, and that makes it much easier to loop the right people into that conversation and get it resolved in a timely fashion, especially now that we're getting like close to code freeze, for example. And just, you know, in terms of repeated guidance on how to communicate, a lot of the people who've been on the project for a long time, GitHub notifications are mostly noise. I am subscribed to literally tens of thousands of PRs and issues, and I haven't yet figured out how to write a tool that will unsubscribe to all but the ones I care about. So I brutally filter most of them, and it is actually possible to query mentions now. It actually didn't even used to work because GitHub didn't index it or whatever, and I always got a pink unicorn. But in general, it's a really, really, really bad mechanism for looping in senior people on the project. I also cannot watch Slack unless explicitly mentioned. That is not yet most noise. It still has a relatively high signal ratio. SIG architecture mailing list is low enough traffic that I am able to look at that. So the recommendation is to please use that, which also has the advantage that other people see too. So yeah, recommendation is to use the mailing list.
Aaron?
So yeah, I agree with using the mailing list. So for the first quick thing, I'll just make up a plug that maybe can be explored further in contributor experience. we've recently turned on Octobox for a bunch of the GitHub orgs to attempt to find a better way of doing GitHub notifications. It seems like it has improved significantly since like it was last examined a year ago. So if anybody wants to try giving Octobox a shot, that's octobox.io. It's supported on Kubernetes and Kubernetes SIG and all that stuff, and lets you do a lot of fancy filtering of why are you being notified, what are the labels on all the things, so on and so forth. I haven't personally used it, but people who used to be skeptical of it have started using it. I'm taking that as signal. Second thing, if we're using the mailing list, I feel like one of the things that I took away from last week's meeting was that it's kind of unclear if we have accurate representation of the workload that this SIG does and how that is distributed amongst this SIG's membership. So I think the mailing list will certainly will ensure productive use of our time here. I was kind of curious what we're doing from the perspective of visualizing our work and making sure we understand who's doing what work. Perhaps it's too early for us to have that conversation. Like there are 4 different project boards in a repo called architecture tracking. And we just linked to that other project board for conformance, which is an organization-wide project board in the Kubernetes thing. And then there's the mailing list. So can we reduce any of that at all? What do you all think?
So the 2 sub-projects that are active, API governance, API review, and conformance, are both working on streamlining the processes that they use for managing work. API review is currently ahead, and I think Jordan talked about that somewhat last time. We need to get to a similar happy place with conformance for sure. I think those 2 sub-projects are the areas where we should focus. For other miscellaneous questions that come up, I don't know that there's a better answer than the mailing list right now.
Okay, that's fine. I think it's just important we say that out loud, and so that that's where we're starting from. We'll try all questions go to the mailing list, and then the sub-projects we're tracking because people are using project boards dedicated to those sub-projects.
Yeah. And the good thing about project boards is that they are good for polling, and because they support things like ordering, which can give a fine-grained prioritization, can be an efficient way to work through a sequence of items. But it's very asynchronous since it's polling-based. So I don't know that email is that much better in practice because you can only look at it so frequently, but yeah, I don't know how other thoughts there. I mean, if we created yet another board for just raising issues or something, that could be yet another place to poll, I guess. I don't know.
I guess perhaps I'm raising the question by proxy for Craig and Lockie as representatives of SIG PM, since I think there was discussion of having SIG PM offer like grooming services to SIGs or groups that are cross-cutting across the project. And so like, are there areas they could be helping us with, or are we gonna just kind of try and handle it ourselves for now with them as observers to potentially suggest what we could be doing better?
Well, that's a totally different story. And yes, we totally need help creating the process for conformance, for example. Like Jordan is working on the process and the tooling and whatnot for API review. We don't have someone, as far as I know, working on something similar to conformance that will actually work. So that's where we can definitely use process and automation help.
And I'll speak up there a little bit. I think the goal is definitely to get there. The challenge is to have enough people focused consistently enough over time on processes for particular SIGs or working groups to contribute materially, as opposed to just drive by and say, here's some advice, let's change this thing here and there. And so in SIG PM, I think we're really trying to staff up and start doing that. And I think the best way we can do that is to make an agreement that some of the SIGs or some of the working groups want that help, get involvement from folks from SIG PM, and do that on a consistent basis over time and show that as a good working pattern, and then replicate where it makes sense. So the question is, where is the need greatest? And then we can be directed there. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, thank you. The Quinton also raised a question that actually went back to the last topic here. It looks like he got into the final review on the pull request, and Quinton's question was, why were the to-dos removed? And he pointed at you, Jace. The two to-dos were the question on lack of consensus in the SIG regarding the need for company diversity, and then it remains unspecified how SIG architecture gets involved in resolving technical conflicts within and between other SIGs and the subproject. Jace, can you did the pull request. Can you respond to that?
Sure, let me unmute. So those are specifically addressed in the centralization concerns. So specifically the project-wide technical leads isn't feasible for the project, nor is it good, and it also contributes to the P0 problem of burnout. The diversity of chairs thing was also in there too, which has been settled over months of soliciting people to join as contributing leaders to the SIG. And Matt, you're the only person that actually did that or even spoke to me about it. So with our sort of working agreements around skewing toward action instead of political things, this has been a clear case of we've made that abundantly clear that we want to have diversity, and the people who have volunteered are the people who volunteered. So I don't know if there's much more to say about that.
Yeah, and I think I'll add as well, I think if somebody wants to be more involved in SIG architecture and helping doing some of these things, please get involved. Reach out to myself, Jace, or Brian, because more help would be greatly appreciated. So please, we want it. It just hasn't happened. And then the other, when it comes to how to get involved in resolving technical conflicts, at least my take on this is most of the parts of code have owners and people involved at certain levels. And then we have the KEP process, which we're really starting to double down on in using KEPs. And some of the previous meetings we've talked about how everything that's going into 114 needs to be a KEP. And through that process is how we can engage on these forms of things in order to provide that. And the real technical ownership is documented in the owner's files, quite frankly, who owns what code and what controlling to make those decisions and those guidance. And then we have certain patterns we're starting to use, things such as CRDs, controllers. There's certain patterns that have emerged on doing things that provide a lot of guidance on their own that give us consistency. And so a lot of it comes down to that, or into SIG architecture being responsible for the scope of the project. And then those kinds of things we can bring up, but much more of that we want to push to the mailing list. So then we've got a good documented path. People can do stuff asynchronously. We're not jumped on in a meeting, but we've got time to soak it in and think about it and reflect. And that comes to the group and being able to do things in some of those mailing lists. At least that's my 2 cents on it. Is there something in there, Quinton, that you're still looking for?
Yeah, I think the answers were not to my question. So there was a discussion about whether we want diversity in the SIG leadership, which is a different question than whether we've found volunteers. So there was one camp that said we did not want company diversity, and there was another camp that said we did. And that's why the wording said there was a lack of consensus. So that's different than we tried to find people and nobody stepped up, and so we've given up. So that was the first question.
So I think the distinction you're making is whether we want it and whether we're going to mandate it.
Correct. Well, those are two different things, but yes, do we want it? The wording of the stuff that's been deleted is that there remains lack of consensus regarding the need. My other question was, we discussed the other stuff that's contained in this PR in this meeting last week, and we agreed to change the frequency of the meeting and the KEP stuff, but I don't recall us discussing removing the to-dos. It kind of looks like that got slipped in. I stand corrected, but that's what it looks like from the outside. So I'm not, yeah.
Yeah, brought it up. It was in the slide deck. You can watch it, but it was definitely mentioned that was specifically one of the action items.
Okay. Yeah. Just in general, for anyone who missed last week's meeting or part of it, I do recommend watching the video. It was super important and hopefully informative about what we're trying to do in terms of setting up the rest of the project for success by helping to disseminate knowledge and putting into place mechanisms like a scaled out API review process that enables everybody on the project to work in good faith towards, following the best practices, conventions, standards, et cetera, that we feel should apply across the entire project. So it's more about a proactive, distributed approach as opposed to, having every single issue raised to SIG architecture. Like Jordan went through the 35 KEPs or enhancements a few meetings ago, for example. Even with one meeting a week, there's no way we could run through that many in the 6 meetings we have before code freeze in each release cycle, for instance, right? So, really going back to the original motivations for creating SIG architecture in terms of finding a better way to achieve our goals. It's more aligned with sustainability, like avoiding burnout that Jace mentioned, effectiveness, actually being able to successfully ensure that all of these efforts are moving toward the way that we want and in line with the project's values, which I do recommend going to look at. The project's values are documented in terms of decentralization versus centralization and so on. So, so anyway, making the 2 main activities, current main activities of the SIG, the API governance and review process and the conformance efforts to be well-run sub-projects that more people can get engaged with, especially more people in the other SIGs where those folks have the actual domain expertise in those areas. That's really our current focus and our current goals.
Quinton, I'm not sure whether that answered your question. My take on the first one is, do we want multi-company to diversity? And what I found was that folks tended to want it, but the bias was towards action, so it wasn't about mandating it. It was about who would show up and do things. As far as where SIG architecture gets involved in the conflicts, and to what extent, I think in the way that we're trying to disseminate things out and in some of the other processes like the KEP process and some of the desire to document the architecture patterns, those kinds of things start to fall out through those capacities, and that's how it happens. But does that at least help? Or is there something else you wanted to push back on and bring into the discussion?
We can take it offline. I mean, I don't see the purpose in removing these 2 things which appear to be unresolved. I would want to kind of cover up a trail.
Okay, can you do me a favor?
Agreement, but
yeah. Oh, you mean I was actually going to say, Quinton, can you do me a favor and actually take this specifically to the mailing list so it ends up in a way we can continue this discussion asynchronously between now and our next meeting in 2 weeks on March 14th?
Sure. I've done it, 4 times already in this PR and previous incarnations of the thing. So I'm kind of getting tired of it now, and every time it gets deleted eventually. But yes, if I need to do it a 5th time, I can do that.
Thank you.
I do want to call out that in terms of consensus, we don't have a decision-making format in our SIG, precisely for this reason. So, I mean, it's sort of like we can have opinions one way or the other on it, but we're not going to reach a quote-unquote consensus. It certainly seems like the vast majority of people don't find this a concern, and the people that did last time was relatively small by ratio comparison. So I'm worried that we're going to, drag this through the mud again and again and again, and that it's not really productive, and it's, using cycles of people's time to respond to this when it's not necessarily something that adds value to the SIG. So I would just say that, we can frame this in terms of solutioning, and that's again skewing toward action. But I'm really reluctant to see this yet again wind up in a mire of yes, no decision making that doesn't even, there's no consensus framework for us to make a decision around. So I would just caution against, that.
Yeah, I would like to follow up on what Matt said, which is we're really trying to double down on KEP. So I think the KEPs are the place where we want to agree on how to move forward or whether to move forward on proposals. So that's really where this needs to get addressed. And the KEP is moving to SIG PM.
Yeah, and if there's something that comes up as a technical issue within the KEPs that's architecture related, then that's definitely fair game to bring up here in the mailing list or in some other capacity that we've talked about, because there may definitely be times where a SIG wants to go in a direction that doesn't make sense and it doesn't work within the architecture, or it's an API change that isn't being brought into the API review process, something like that. But most of the time we hope that there's a process part of SIG architecture to properly address those kinds of things.
Yeah, on the API front, we have the API approvers. So we have a set of deciders who can decide on that.
All right, well, we are at time. We removed a 20-minute segment and we still filled the whole hour. Thank you, everybody, for coming and being involved and having a wonderful conversation. The video for this will be online shortly, and we'll see you back here again 2 weeks, not the normal 1 week time, March 14th. Have a wonderful 2 weeks. See you all online.
Thanks for hosting, Matt.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks all.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, bye.